Hi everyone. Today we are going to continue our discussion about the sorting algorithms. And I know we have spent a lot of time on sorting, and today the topic is kind of new because, as you can see, we want to do linear time sorting algorithms. And you may wonder, is that really possible? Because we have seen some of the sorting algorithms, and they are not as good as linear yet, right? So today, this is what we are going to cover. We are going to do a very quick review of the sorting algorithms we have covered in the lectures, and then I want to show you the lower bound of comparison sorting, and that is the omega in log n. So that is the lower bound. This is how low or how fast we can get using comparison sorting, and then eventually we want to discuss how we can make it a linear time sorting algorithm and why it's possible. Okay, so let's do a very quick review. We talk about the insertion sort, and for the insertion sort, and probably you have done that in CS2 or CSC 500. So you know this the insertion sort is kind of easy to code, and usually if we are only doing a small size of the values to be sorted, and then you don't really need to worry about do we want to do a quicksort or some other fancy algorithm, or if we just go with some basic insertion sort, it doesn't matter. And especially since the insertion sort, we don't have to do any recursion, and this means the insertion sort will be faster on smaller size of the input. And the problem with the recursion is for each of the recursive function cow, and we introduce a little bit overhead. And for this kind of such a small input size, and we don't really have to worry about that, and any quick basic sorting algorithm will work for say 50 elements. Okay, and then and another thing is, well, for the insertion sort, if the best case, if we have all the values pre-sorted low to high, for example, and then insertion sort, in the best case, what's the time complexity? So think about that. Uh, the main side of the insertion sort is we are expanding the sorted portion, right? And then we started the sorted portion to be 1. And then we expand that the sorted portion to be 2. We expand again, the sorted portion will be 3. So what's the best case? The best case will be we have a pre-sorted list. And let me just write down on the PowerPoint here. Say if we have a pre-sorted list 1, 3, 5, 10, and then 11. Okay, so when we are doing the insertion sort, we first say, okay, the 1, this is the only sorted portion, so that's good. And after that, we want to expand the sorted portion by including one more value. And if that new value is not at the right place, we are going to insert that to the right place. So let me do, excuse me. Let me expand the sorted portion for now. So let's also include 3. So when we include 3, you will see that 3 is already at the right place, so nothing to do. And then we want to expand again. When we expand to 5, we want to check whether 5 is at the right location. And it turns out that 5 is greater than all the other value. So come on. So 5 is also at the right location. So we expand 10, and you will find that 10 is greater than 5. 10 is greater than 5, so 10 is greater than all the other values. So 10 is at the right place. And then if we expand to 11, and you will see the same thing. 11 is greater than 10, so 11 is greater than all the other values. This means 11 is at the right place. So this means if we have a pre-sorted list, and then in the best case, well, the insertion sort, that is a linear algorithm. So and then this brings me to this point. The point is, if we are doing a nearly sorted input, and then the insertion sort will also be fast. Okay, and how about the worst case? the worst case is, well, n square. So that is everything is sorted, but instead of low to high, well, everything is sorted from high to low, and then we have to do a lot of shuffling. And even for the O n square, and we will still say this is a O n even for the average case, this is still a O n square. So this is the insertion sort. And how about the merge sort? For the merge sort, it's a divide and conquer algorithm, and we want to split the array to be sorted into two halves, and then we recursively sort the sub arrays, and then eventually we have to spend a little bit extra effort to combine two sorted sublists into one sorted list. So there is a linear time merge step, and I usually call that the aftermath after the recursion. Okay, well, and we have proven that for the time complexity, even for the worst case, it will be O n log n, and the problem is it doesn't sort in place. So that's the reason we don't like the merge sort that much. Okay, and then we talk about the heap sort. And for the heap sort, we are making use of a data structure called heap. And in our lectures, we talk about the max heap. That is for a parent. The parent has to be greater or equal to both of the children. And this rule is enforced in all the parent children pairs, and then we have a heap. And for the heap sort, and again we will have a n log n worst case, and then it also sorts in place. So it seems that heap sort is good, but it still has a fairly high amount of the shuffling. So it's not the perfect. And you may ask, why heap sort is not perfect? Because for heap sort and then merge sort, and then for the average case of the quicksort, they are all n log n. So why do we say quicksort is still the best? And the reason is you want to pay attention to here. So there is a base number here. So n log n. So but for this log n, what is the base number? Is the base number 1.1, or is the base number 1.5, or is the base number 10? So this base number can really make the difference. Okay, and then for the heap sort, and we comparing the heap sort with the quicksort, and the quicksort has a smaller base number here. So that's the reason we say the quicksort is the better one. Okay, and then we have the quicksort, and for the quicksort we have we are using a divide and conquer main site, and then we introduce another concept called the pivot. So using the pivot, we want to separate all the values into two parts, and that's called the partition process. When we are doing the partition, we have the lower half, those are the values smaller or equal to the pivot. And then we have the upper half, those are the values greater or equal to the pivot. And after that, the pivot will stay at the same place, and then we want to recursively sort the lower half and the upper half. Okay, and then for the for the average case, that is O n log n. And it is fast in practice because the base number here, the base number will be, it's usually a very small number. Okay, and O n square in the worst case. So in the worst case, and if we are really unlucky, we constantly pick the highest value or the lowest value possible, and then we will have a O n square. However, with some smart implementation plug in into this algorithm to better select the pivot, and then we can avoid this case. So even though theoretically we can have the worst case, O n square, in practice we don't worry about that too much. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. How fast can we sort? And based on your observation, and you will feel that it is n log n, right? So in this class, we will provide a lower bound, a theoretical lower bound, and then we will try to beat that. And you may ask, since we are able to prove that is a theoretical lower bound, and then how can we beat that? And hold that question. We are going to discuss this later. Okay. Well, let's see. For the lower bound, and our theorem is if we are doing comparison sorts. So the sorting, the results of the sorting is based on a series or a sequence of comparisons. And then for each comparison, that is a pairwise comparison of only two values. And then we are doing a comparison sort. And for a comparison sort, and then the lower bound possible will be omega and log n. Remember, big omega is for the lower bound, right? So how do we understand this? And well, let's try to envision the sorting process as a decision tree. It doesn't matter you are doing merge sort or you are doing heap sort. Well, in the memory, when we are doing this sorting, what we have done is we have to go through a sequence of the comparisons. We have to grab two values, do a comparison, and another two values, do the comparison. And after we have done enough of the comparisons, and eventually we are able to make a decision on the sequence of all the values from low to high. Okay, and then let's assume that we are doing three values. We only want to source three values and value the variable 1, variable 2, and variable 3. Okay, and then we have this decision tree structure. So in here, we are comparing, say for this node, we are comparing 1 and 2. And well, you can consider this not 1 and 2 as the natural numbers. You can consider them as the variable 1 and variable 2. So if variable 1 is smaller or equal to variable 2, and then we can do another comparison between variable 2 and variable 3. So if variable 2 is smaller or equal to variable 3, this means variable 3 is the largest, and then variable 1 is the lowest. Okay, and then on this case, if variable 2 is greater or equal to variable 3, and then we have to do a further comparison between variable 1 and variable 3, and depending on the result, we will go either variable 1, variable 3, and variable 2, or variable 3, variable 1, and variable 2 as the final sorted list. Okay, so this is a decision tree structure. And if you see any of the sorting algorithms we have worked on, and you will find that we are simply doing the comparisons. And some of the sorting algorithms, we have a smarter strategy on doing this sequence of the comparisons, so we can save some of the repetitions of the comparisons. We don't have to waste that much of the effort. However, for all the sorting algorithms we have seen in this course, we are simply doing the comparisons. So all the sorting algorithms we have seen in this course, they are all comparison sorts. Okay, so after we understand this tree structure, let's see, what do the leaves represent? So for each of the leaf, we have a sequence, right? So that is the final version of the sorted values. And the next question, how many leaves must be there? Think about this question. So say in this scenario, in this decision tree, we have three values to be sorted, right? And then how many of the possible final sorted list can be there using only three values? Let's see. We can have, let's assume that we simply have three slots. Slot 1, slot 2, and then slot 3. And then we have three values to be filled in there, and they are variable 1, variable 2, and variable 3. So there are different ways that we can fill in to those slots, right? And then say if we want to fill in this slot first, and then how many possibilities are there? There are three different possibilities to be filled in to the first slot. And after the first slot is filled in, how many probabilities or how many possible values can be filled in to the second slot? 2. And then how about the last one? We have only one left. So in this case, 3 multiplied by 2 and then multiplied by 1. What is that? That is 3 factorial, right? So that's the answer. And then how many leaves must be there? And the answer is we have to put in at least 3 factorial number of the leaves in the tree structure. Okay? So for the decision tree, well, decision tree can, as we have discussed, decision tree can model any comparison source. So we have for the tree, and then we have to put in at least in factorial of the leaves there, and then we can assume that there is a height of the tree. Okay, so now we want to prove one thing. We want to prove that for a decision tree structure modeling a comparison sort, the fastest time complexity will be omega n log n. So how do we prove that? So this is theorem, and then what is the minimum number of the leaves? And we know the answer. It is n factorial. And if we know the height of the tree is h, and then what is the maximum number of the leaves possible? So just now we talk about the minimum number of the leaves, and then the answer is in factorial. And if we know the height of the tree and what is the maximum of the leaves possible, and let's use this strategy. So we assume that we have a height. Whoa. No, no. Okay, so we assume that we have the height of h. So we have a tree structure, and then for the height of h minus 1, and we assume that there's no leaf at all. Okay, and then on the last level there are all leaves. So for each of, we have 2 leaves, and then we have 2 leaves like this. So in the last level we have all leaves, and then how many leaves are we gonna have? And the answer will be 2 powers n. Okay, and for this question the answer is in factorial. Okay, so clearly the minimum number of the leaves will be less than or equal to the maximum number of the leaves, and this means in factorial will be smaller or equal to 2 powers h, and h is the height. And then if we take log 2 on the both sides, and then we have the log n factorial is smaller or equal to h. And then we want to apply the Stirling approximation, and that is the n factorial is greater than n divided by e, and then powers n. So we will have h, the height of the tree, is greater or equal to the log n divided by e, and then powers n. So we have this kind of a log and this log. So one thing we can do is we can move this n outside of the log here, and then we have the log n divided by e, and log n divided by e can be divided into log n minus log e. So eventually we have this version. So we have n log n and minus n log e. So n log e, in this case, the log e will be considered as a constant. So we say that is the height is a omega log n log n. And by the way, think about that. What's the height of this decision tree? The height is how many comparisons we have to make from the very beginning, from the very first comparison to the very last comparison before we can draw a conclusion on the final sorted version of the list, right? So that is how many comparisons we have to do. And what is that? That is simply the time complexity. So this means, well, the time complexity of a comparison sorting algorithm is omega n log n. Okay, so we have proven that as long as we are doing a comparison sort, and then comparison sorting algorithm, and then the lower bound we can have will be n log n in this case. Okay, So I think I want to stop this video here. In this video, we have reviewed all the sorting algorithms we have covered in the lecture in this class. And of course, in some of the homeworks, in the exams, we have covered a little more of the sorting algorithms, but we review all the sorting algorithms we have covered in the lectures. Okay, and then we prove that for the lowest possible or for the fastest possible, we can have n log n for comparison sorting algorithms. And then we want to move on. We want to say how we can do better than omega n log n. And I will save this topic for the next video. Okay, so see you in the next video.